Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and I am so thrilled today to have Bernadette Thompson with me. And Bernadette is the owner of Tell Me Our Story Ancestral Healing. She is an intuitive ancestral healer, grief and spiritual coach, and a guide for those who have experienced loss, helping them move through the grieving process. Bernadette has a BA in psychology and 20 years of experience in training in grief and trauma, working with both young and old, guiding them through some of life's most difficult transitions. She is certified as the end of life doula through the University of Vermont and is a trained genealogist, allowing her to discover the stories and documents of ancestors that give clues to their struggles and triumphs of their lives. You have such an interesting background. Thank you for doing this today, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Angela. I'm really happy to be here. Very happy to be here. So
yeah, and when I was looking at your bio, there's so many things that come forward for me, but especially the whole piece of ancestral healing. And I guess I want to hear a little bit more of your background and just how you ended up in this space that you are now.
Yeah, it is a unique space with the different types of background that I have, but I feel that I've been led to where I am today. Since you mentioned the ancestral healing, just going back to the beginning of that, I just have always had a love of ancestry and history and my own family's journey. And so that's where those roots were kind of sowed. But that was, I call it my sidekick. That was my sidekick. And so, but it was something that I did learn from many genealogists, learned how to do those searches and really get into to the story. And then my professional life, I worked in a middle school for 13 years with students that had both grief and trauma, helping them. It was on an alternative team, helping them to get back into regular classrooms. We were working on behavior plans. I was on like a mental health team that worked with them. And so that was a lot of what my life was. And then my husband came to me in 2013 and said to me that he had a problem. And his problem, unfortunately, was alcoholism. And it was something that we knew was in his family. And we'd always talked about it. And, that you have to be careful. We both came from families that, alcohol flowed. I come from an Irish Catholic background. So there was, and so when he came to me, I was shocked because I had missed all the signs. He definitely drank a lot, and there were occasions it was a problem, but he was always never minded when I brought it up, and we would always talk about it. But he came to me and said, that he was struggling and he couldn't hold on anymore, basically. And that was kind of the beginning of the end, unfortunately, because he passed away 4.5 years later in November of 2017. And it was during that time that I really leaned in amazingly. I leaned in on my ancestry because when you have someone who is sick, and David, alcoholism is a disease, a progressive disease, but but it's also an addiction that brings other things with it, shame and, things like that. And so it is like this circling the wagons, but you probably understand that when someone is in the family is very sick, you feel like, okay, we got to bring this in tighter so that we can handle this. And so you isolate a little bit. And that's really what happened. Our children had grown. Our youngest was in college at that point. And so I was just trying to help him in any way that I could, and had, all these things. And, but one of the things I did was I kept doing ancestral research, not only for myself, but I did it for others, because it was a way to, in those very anxious moments, to take away the that kind of anxiety. And it's like when you read a good book and you go in and you read that book, and that's what it's like when you really are. I focus on finding the stories when I do ancestry. So not so much about putting the names and the dates and, going back. I mean, we definitely do that, but I'm always trying to say, who are they? Who, this person that I'm focusing on. So that where it was kind of where I was. And I had a spiritual awakening during this process of being so stressed, and reaching out when we ourselves are experiencing grief and trauma. We often reach to the other side. So prayer came back into my life, and I started saying the rosary. I'm not a practicing Catholic these days, but grew up in a Catholic tradition. And I heard actually a medium, John Edward, he's a medium on the East Coast, and he talked about using the rosary as a way of meditation. And I was looking at anything that could settle me down. And so I started saying the rosary, and I started imagining my ancestors sitting around a table with me. And because I knew them so well, because I had done so much research. And this one night I had a dream, which is called a visitation. And what it was that my great aunt, Sister Lou, came to me. She was a nun, and she came to me in a dream, and it's like you and I sitting across on a Zoom. It was literally just her and I across a table. The room was kind of golden, which was kind of, and I didn't want to look at her. I was afraid to look at her, because I thought, if I look at, like, I think I knew somewhere in my psyche that this wasn't normal. There was, and she gently grabbed my hands and had me look at her. And she said, "We hear your prayers." And I woke up.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of understanding that I wasn't alone, and that there was, that spirit was with me, that loved ones were with me, and they knew what I was going through. So that was an amazing first part of my spiritual awakening. And then the second one is even a little bit, this happened a few weeks later, and you would call it a spiritually transformative experience. But I was saying the rosary again. I used to say it before I went to bed to settle down. And I had this experience as I was saying the rosary, that I felt this channeling through me, and I began to say the rosary in an Irish brogue. And I'm all Irish. And, to say there was disbelief or is, being simple. I mean, I didn't understand this, but I felt this very strong cadence and this very strong, just this spirit in me. And I knew that somebody was saying the rosary with me. I knew it was coming through from spirit. And I was able to discover that it was my great-great-grandmother on my mother's side when I went back and looked at my tree. And I knew that because she just kind of, her energy came to me when I looked at the tree. So that is my extraordinary kind of venture into this ancestral healing, as this relationship, this deeper relationship with my ancestors came to be. So that's kind of,
Yeah. And It's such a beautiful story, and it really is inspiring. It makes me want to get going and start, digging into my ancestry a little bit more. And I've always kind of had that in the back, talking to my mom about my aunts, her sisters, and my grandmother, and just finding out little things about them. And then at one point, I realized that they were young widows too, that they had lost their husbands early. And I remember the comfort I felt in that, because I realized that actually there was support out there for me that I didn't even realize was there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was,
That, yeah,
yeah.
Angela, that's beautiful. That's exactly how ancestral healing works.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is understanding that our ancestors have experienced grief and trauma. And we know, science knows now that ancestral trauma can be passed down genetically.
Right.
And genetically, it is what the simple way to explain it is, and it's called epigenetics, is the science, that the term. And what epigenetics talks about is the gene, it affects the way the gene works. So I use just like a blanket kind of, let's call it the anxiety gene. And when you've experienced trauma, and it's particularly repetitive trauma, that gene gets turned up so that all of your reactions come through that lens of trauma. So small things feel like big things. Big things feel like big things. Everything feels like a big thing. And what happens when that gene comes down, is passed down to us, it's passed down in the turned up state. So that many people, there's a lot of work done around Holocaust descendants, and many people will grow up with these overactive anxiety genes without having experienced the trauma. And that can be, the healing part comes from when we know their stories, and we can understand what happened to them, and know that along with the trauma that they experienced, that they also experienced resilience and strength, and that we are the example of that because we're here. And that's where the healing comes from, is knowing their stories. And that's what brings us the healing.
How beautiful, and how beautifully explained. I've heard about ancestral healing. In fact, I've had ancestral healing, with other healers, but I've never heard it explained so well. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And so
Well,
when you're working with people, oh, sorry, did you?
yeah, no, that's exactly what that was exactly what I was going to say next. Um, Ancestral healing is often in the energy healing category, where people will, it's an energy type of thing. But more and more, it is, if you understand your ancestor, who they were, and can go back and tell that story, it just opens the door for knowledge about who you are. And so I help people by building their ancestral trees, but I do it with the lens of ancestral trauma and ancestral healing, and the lens of opening up to spirit, that our ancestors who have crossed over, are still with us. And, in my example, when they came to me, and it changed my life. It took this grief and David was still alive when they first came to me. So, he knew about it, and he used to say, I wouldn't get into heaven unless I was married to you. Because, I'm thinking, well, based on the end of your life performance, or some things. But yeah, so that is how I kind of do both, like help people, because often it's in grief, which I had said before, in grief and in trauma, that we start to seek these things. trying to help us understand not only why we're in this where we are, but how to move through it, and how to know that they are so close to us, and we don't lose them, we just we have to learn the way that they can communicate with us. And so I help people to kind of understand what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel that your husband is with you on your journey now? And do you connect with him?
I do. He is definitely with me. He and it's good to share, just because one of the things I try and teach people is how we can communicate. So we often talk about signs. Does your husband send you signs?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And so signs is one of the ways that we can, I like to use the term open the window a little bit for those that really aren't sure that they can believe that we can connect with the other side. And signs are like that, opening the window to, to let us know they're there. And, it can be, a lot of people talk about cardinals or butterflies or signs like that. But it's also music. It's also anything that draws our attention immediately to our loved one who has crossed, and that it brings that energetic connection together. And so it is one of those things. And David, it's my favorite one to share. Numbers is another way. Like, so David passed away on 11/1/17. So 1111 and 7 is always a sign for me that he is around. And music. And so this example of just how he communicates, I haven't shared the part about my elder care management, which I can show will after. But I was working with a client, and I needed to take them to on an appointment, and it was a long, it was a 2-hour ride there and back. And so I just put some music on just to entertain us. And it was a playlist that I had made, so it had some of our favorite songs on it, mine and David's. And so I kept talking to him while I was driving. I'm like, come on, play one of our songs. And it's not playing. I'm like, come on, play one of our songs. And he plays one, and it was called Fat Man in the Bathtub, which is a song by Little Feat. It's this old, I don't know, 80s or 90s. And it was a song that I didn't really like, but I tolerated, but he loved it. So I'm like, really? That's the one you're going to. So at any rate, the trip is over, and I dropped off my client, and I'm headed to the grocery store, and it's raining out. And I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't even have to go to the grocery store. I wish I could just go home. And I stop at a light, and the music was still playing. And Landslide from Stevie Nicks comes on. And that's a song that meant something very special between David and I. And especially because there's a line in it about not knowing what to do because I built my life around you. Like, how do I move forward? And that was, something that was so powerful. So that comes on, and I look at the car in front of me, and the license plate is 1117.
Oh, wow.
So I share that. It was a long story, but I wanted to share it, that's how powerful it can be when they come to be with us, when our loved ones come to be with us. So it is, yeah. And I'm sure because you know that he's with you all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And there's been so many really cool signs and synchronicities and stories along the way. And I'm still getting them,
Yeah.
I still get them too. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. And if you start this conversation with people, they all generally have stories of some kind, or they know of somebody who has a really good story about that. And so, yeah, it's beautiful. And I love sharing those because it gives people a lot of hope, I think.
Mm-hmm. And it's the doorway to open up. Our communication with the other side can be even stronger than that, and develop a language that we have to speak the same language, and we all do that differently because we all process the other side, so to speak, or our spirituality. We all process it different because our brains are different. So what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. But I know that from my experience, not only connecting with David and other, obviously my great great grandmother who came in the Irish Brogue, and Sister Lou who started it all for me. I also now have a guide that I connect with. And so when we allow ourselves just to open the window a little bit, and I say that because we don't have to open it all the way right away. I remember as I started on this journey, when, after Sister Lou had come to me and that, I started reading book after book and just trying to figure this all out. And I remember reading in one book, somebody saying that she said she didn't not believe. She just didn't believe yet. Because some of this is too, I want to say, I know out there is kind of not a great word, but some people may resonate with that, but it feels a little too woo-woo, or that idea that we can connect, because we've never been taught that.
Right.
And you would know, as I know, we also were never taught to talk about death.
No.
And so when we are faced with, we don't know what to do with that, how to process that in our bodies, how to process it in our emotions. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you have so much wisdom in so many different areas, even the psychology. I'm thinking, wow, that's something I would have loved to have dived into earlier, to have that background, as well as the ancestral healing, as well as, the grief and trauma coaching and all of that. I think that you would be an amazing person to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what you like, what do you do? What do you offer as far as, resources or opportunities for people to work with you?
So when somebody comes to me, when they go to the website, and the website is tellmeourstory.com, it is from the point of view of the child asking the parent to tell me our story. And but there are ways. Sometimes people will come to me and they just want one session. They want to just find out what I do, like a healing session. And I often connect with either their loved ones, not in a evidential mediumship way, but definitely connect with them and am able to share some things with those that are, wanting to know or feel a connection with their loved one, especially if it's around signs. I saw this butterfly that was right in front of me, and I can confirm or deny,
Yeah.
whether they were in that. And then I also work with people in a larger way where I will help them build their family tree, and in that process go through the ancestral healing and helping them understand the traumas that their ancestors have gone through and the stories. And then at the same time, when they begin to feel their ancestors, that's what opens them up to feeling like maybe we can connect with the other side. When they energetically begin to feel this connection, is because our bodies feel it. And I know that you feel it, your husband, in your body when he is connecting with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's an energy connection that is I want to say it's similar literally just to electricity, and I try and help people to understand it. You know how we can have static electricity on us, and we go and touch something in there, and we don't see it, but there's this connection that
Right.
proves to us that there's electricity in the air and there's electricity connecting us. And so I try and help people to understand that there is this energy connection, with others on the other side. And so that's how I work with people. And I just work with people if somebody just wants to explore their spirituality, if
Mhm.
they want to, just they're at that place in life where maybe the religious tradition they were brought up in doesn't feel good, or they feel like there's more in there and there's not a way for them to find that in what they're doing right now. So there's a way to explore that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we started, you had given me a little clue that you've got a book on the go right now. Can you tell
Yes.
us just a little bit about what's in that book?
Um, Thank you. Yes. So this it is a little bit of a memoir to help people understand the story that I have come through. And there are many stories about people who I've worked with. So giving examples so people can we learn through others' stories. And so that's what this book is about my journey through how I was brought up and then opening to this. And also to right now in the working title, it's Ancestral Whispers is the title.
Oh, beautiful.
And, how my husband's passing has unveiled my spiritual gifts or spiritual, something we're getting to the end of it. It's going to the publisher today. So we're
Wow.
almost there. But it's going to really uh, help people to, really feel their own feelings while they're reading about what I went through. And because we all share that, and there's going to be moments that they're going to say, okay, that's the way I felt, or that's what's happened to me. And I think that's what is going to be the beauty of it, because that's how I learned. I learned from reading so many others' experiences. I'm looking forward to reading your book as well.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
because it is the more that we share, the more that we raise the consciousness in the world. And I think that's what our journey has been. And those of us in the grieving process, it heightens it and awakens us to it a little sooner, I think, sometimes than if we were on a more steady path.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And, you highlighted the questions that come up through that process. And that's really what gets us digging into our own, spirituality and why are we here? What is our purpose? And, all of that. So, yeah,
Well,
beautiful.
and the other thing we talked about too was the grief, and the talking about death. One of the things after David passed away, I left the school system only because I felt like it had been a challenging time for me, and I needed something else. And the middle school kids, they would grunt hello to me, but when I went to work and did some elder care management, they wanted to hug me. So it was a pleasant change. The grunts were from the middle school kids really were hello, but
Yeah.
but I
I get
so
that. Yeah.
but it helped me, and it helped the clients that I worked with. UVM offered a end of life doula certification through the medical college, because they had such an interest in palliative care and helping people to understand that grief, not grief, but end of life and crossing over were part of they were as beautiful as coming into this world, that our passing to the other side is a normal part. And that was such a wonderful way for me to process what I had been through, but also to open up the conversation with people and to let them know that there's nothing to fear. I sat with many elderly people who were, right on the edge of, their passing, and just telling them. Many of them would see family or feel family that had come and were around them, and just, I would say, you're going to go to sleep here and wake up there, and just how gentle that our crossing can be. And so I think what you and I are both doing, having experienced the losses that we've experienced, is just allowing, spirit is working through us and allowing us to reach out to others so that we can help more of us who are going through this process.
Absolutely. And you are an angel.
Oh, so are you. So are you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And is there anything else you'd want to share before we wrap up?
I would just say, one, I have a podcast.
Oh,
and
yes.
so this podcast was kind of bequeathed to me from someone I was a co-host. And it's an interesting podcast because it talks a lot about people that have had like near-death experiences or spiritually transformative experiences, or just this understanding about the other side or curious about the other side. A lot of people who are in the middle wanting to explain science and faith and things. So some really interesting conversations. I've actually been a speaker at the International Association of Near-Death Studies. I was at their conference last year, and I will be at their conference this year as a panelist. And as you open up, as you begin to go through your grieving process or your awakening process, so many things will be out there for you to learn. And I'm trying to bring to the podcast, which is called How I Made It Through. I'm trying to bring people on who have had challenges, and a lot of them have a spiritual, connection with them. I just had this very lovely, fun, interesting astrologer come on. And because I said, I never even thought about that my thoughts about the universe and God and the heavens and all of that was very based in my Catholic upbringing. And so since David has passed, a lot more has opened up to me. So I think that would be the thing I would share, is to let people know that this journey that they may begin in understanding their grief and looking back into their ancestral trauma and healing may open them up to a world that they might be curious about, and that there's a safe place to learn about it. So
beautiful. Love that.
Yeah,
I encourage people to check your website and check out the podcast. And maybe, do you have a mailing list that people can?
Oh yes. If they go to my website, again, it's tellmeourstory.com. If they go to the website, there's a place for them. They can sign up for a 30-minute question and answer session if they want to figure out what they would like to do. And there's also, they can download, there's a free download that gives them more information, and then they'll be on my list and I can send them, because I do send out little newsletter type things or just information. I'll send out when the podcasts are up, if it's one that they might be interested in listening to, so they can get a lot of information by doing that.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for taking the time, and we'll look forward to your book coming out.
Thank you, Angela. It's been wonderful. I look forward to staying connected with you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching, and bye for now.